Sports and superstitions go hand in hand. Wherever and however the mind can be calmed, you can be sure it has been visited or tried by an athlete desperate to get an edge. What happens less in sports, however, is talk of the supernatural. Yes, old venues are said to have their ghosts, and everyone knows when you're at Notre Dame you're supposed to win one for the Gipper, but rarely does the world of sports involve any real ghost stories. This is what you don't know about two haunted sports venues and one of the most superstitious baseball players of all time. Welcome to What You Don't Know About Sports, where we delve into the forgotten stories, teams, and athletes of sports history and question widely held takes on today's sports. I'm Matt, and this is Blake.
Hello.
And today we want to take a look at some of the superstitious and the supernatural. If you're listening to this kind of live on release week, it's a Friday the 13th week. And if you're not, then, hey, we want you to listen to all of our episodes whenever you find them. So we still hope you enjoy some of this spooky stuff. But before we get into it, Blake, what's your favorite sports superstition?
There's so many, right? Like you said in the open, sports and you can't have sports without superstitions. Every basketball player has a free throw routine and a warm-up routine. Every baseball player has their routine when they get to the plate and they want to blast one over the fence. They got to do it the exact same way every time, kicking the bat and shaking their helmets and like tugging their ears and whatever else they do. So everybody's got something, I think, and I'm going to be a homer, but and this I heard this a long time ago, and I don't even know if this is true. So if you know the right answer, if you know whether this is actually true, you can correct me. But I don't remember hearing about it recently. Michael Jordan used to wear his UNC basketball shorts under his Chicago Bulls, like his NBA shorts during every NBA game he ever played in, apparently. And that's pretty cool because, again, I'm a homer, and he wore those for every game of his NBA career, at least from what I know. That could be wrong. Somebody can correct me. But don't ruin it. Don't ruin it too badly because you might make me cry. Because that's a pretty neat thing.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most famous ones, and a lot of people know about it. A lot of people our age know about it because it's in Space Jam, and it is gross. I mean, it's as cool as it is gross, but it's also gross because he washed them, but like,
did he ever get replacement shorts? Like,
I don't know.
They had to. Like, the shorts he wore in 1984, he wore all the way through 2002. Like, is that what happened? Or maybe UNC just supplied him with shorts over the years? I don't know.
Okay, so they would have to be, I don't know. You would think they couldn't be the originals because eventually they would just wear out, right? But also they would have to be the originals because he is like one of the pioneers for wearing shorts longer and longer over time. So, the college UNC was wearing knee-length shorts too. So it's not like they could just send him another pair of shorties.
The shorts they were wearing in 2000 were probably significantly longer than the shorts he was wearing in like 84.
Yeah, I don't know. So it's Schrodinger's shorts. It both has to be the originals and it can't be at the same time. So I don't know.
What's yours?
I think mine is
you can't most give one of the ones that we're talking about today.
Yeah, that's the thing. Most of mine have to do with baseball, and the dude does a lot of them. The one outside of that is the hockey superstition, where the teams that win the Eastern and Western conferences get a very large trophy presented to them and they never touch it or skate around with it or pick it up or anything at all, because that's not the trophy you want to win. So picking it up is bad luck, or it recognizes that the job is finished.
Bad juju.
Bad juju. Yeah, I like that one, but it doesn't apply to other sports, right? The AFC and NFC champions in football both grab those things and run around the stadiums.
AL and NL in baseball don't seem to care either.
Nobody cares. You win something, you win something. But in hockey, don't pick that giant piece of hardware up, because you're not winning the next one.
At it.
Yeah, they skate over. They stand beside the person presenting it, and the captain takes a picture where he like half-heartedly smiles, and then he's gone. He's out.
Yep.
It's done. It's done. Oh, man. All right. So we wanted to honor the dual meanings of Friday the 13th. There is some spooky factor with it. There are some superstitions with it. Technically, it's about bad luck, but it could be anything. Friday the 13th is a weird day. So we're going to start in Rochester, New York, Frontier Field to be exact. It is the home of the AAA Rochester Red Wings, and it opened in 1997. If we were doing a Rochester sports podcast, the actual building and opening of this thing would be its own episode. It has a lot of red tape and issues, as many stadiums seem to have. But it is a typical modern era AAA stadium in that it does all the things that modern AAA stadiums do. It has 10 to 12,000 seats, depending on how many are open and if they do standing room and things like that. It has seats from one foul pole to the next, which is pretty standard. It's built in town, not out in a suburb or off the highway. It's built in town. It was making use of old abandoned buildings, kind of reclaiming some downtown areas in the architecture and atmosphere of the stadium. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. Its largest crowds also have to do with the same things that draw big AAA baseball crowds. Cal Ripken played there as a member of the Orioles in an exhibition game. Andy Pettit and Hideki Arabu played in rehab starts there. Actually, some of the biggest crowds in the stadium belong to the Rochester Rhinos, what we would consider now a minor league soccer team, but at some points in U.S. soccer history was at the top level of the pyramid, and people would show up, especially in Rochester, for it. So the biggest crowd was 14,000 for a soccer game, which is surprising in a way. I mean, this was in the 90s, 14,000 people.
That seems significant for soccer in America in the 90s, which again used to be top tier, but now not. My first thought telling about the background of this is usually when something I don't know this story, y'all. I have not heard about this story at all. And so my first question is, how does a stadium built in 1997, like, how has it existed long enough to like become haunted? When you think of like normal haunted things, it's like it's something that existed and then didn't exist, or did exist, but weird things happened and then it was maybe abandoned, or some weird stuff happened there and now they've reclaimed it and like the old stuff is still there. But like, this is the only thing it's ever been used for, and it's only 25 years old. So how in the world? I don't understand.
Well, maybe has to do with the construction, the location, and the use, as many of these stadiums now do, the use of old buildings in the construction of the stadium. That means many of those attendance figures may be off by just a few numbers. Turns out, yeah, ghosts. I mean, it is alleged. This part is very much exactly how you would think a ghost story would go. Some of it is more personal stories. This part is just kind of a he said, she said, maybe it happened thing. But apparently, allegedly, bones were dug up in the construction of the stadium. So while they were, breaking ground, digging things up, they found bones. It is unclear if that actually happened. It's also unclear what kind of bones they were. So they could have been animal bones. They could have been human bones. It could be the stereotypical. I feel like every stadium is built on an Indian burial ground,
Sure.
and so it's always spooky. But so that's an issue. There are also, if you look at any story on the internet about the stadium, you will find two buildings that come up regularly that were on this site. One building was an abandoned warehouse that was actually meant to be part of the stadium construction, part of the atmosphere. You know, it was going to stick around, like the warehouse at Camden Yards, the tobacco buildings for the Durham Bulls, things like that. It also, before it was an abandoned warehouse, was a schoolhouse in the 1900s.
Okay.
And so
there we go.
1900 schoolhouses are always haunted. Apparently.
There we go.
The ghost folks will tell you that the spirit and energy of young children just harbors in the building, and then if you tear it down or something happens, that the energy stays and stuff like that. So yeah, that's one of the ideas. That building burned down actually while they were constructing the stadium, so they were unable to use it, but that was part of it. One building that was meant to be torn down and was an old paper factory on the site. Now, this paper factory is said by reports that date back to well before 1997. It was said to be haunted by an old janitor that worked at the facility. So the other thing that goes along in ghost circles is that you can tear down a structure, you can do whatever, but like whatever, the energy, the spirit stays in the same place. So you got these old abandoned buildings that may be haunted prior, tear it down, you get some extra residents. So there's the source of the haunting.
Sure.
Now, here are the pieces of evidence to support that it may be haunted. There's a clubhouse manager that says that when riding the freight elevator up and down in the stadium, you can hear things. You can hear voices. You can hear clangs. It's a freight elevator. Freight elevators make weird noises in the first place. Like a freight elevator in a non-haunted building is weird because it's dark and it's dingy and it's gross. So if you already think the thing may be haunted, then that's an entirely new experience for you. So that one I don't know about. There's a groundskeeper who kind of debunks his own fears in one of the videos about this situation. They interview him and he says, yeah, I hear stuff all the time. I hear clangs, I hear voices, I hear scraping, I hear stuff moving around. But, I'm on ground level and I'm kind of in this little groundskeeping area and I'm underneath. You never know who's above you. There could be people here. I don't know. But this same groundskeeper who has a rational explanation for what he hears also refuses to leave the stadium by himself at night. Like he will not go home alone.
Okay.
At the stadium.
Okay.
Many people will see shadows in the suites walking around the concourse, not when games are going on because there's too many people just milling about, right? But in those off days in the off season, they notice things like that. The most common and well witnessed event, the general manager of the team says that they were just kind of milling about one day inside the stadium on the field, hanging out, and they looked up. And in one of the suites, a television had turned itself on. And this was in a suite that had been locked up. Nobody had been in it, hadn't been used since the end of the season. And this was in the fall. I think they were setting up for a Halloween event at the stadium. TV turned itself on. TV turned itself off. And nobody could explain why that happened. We all know that TVs do this every once in a while. I had one that would turn itself on and off routinely without any explanation. Still have it, still does it. And so that's not necessarily a haunting situation, but when it added with everything else, maybe it is. The one that freaks me out the most, if we're being honest, is that apparently regularly throughout the fall and winter, the area gets infested with crows.
It's always the crows.
Crows? Crows are like in many cultures a superstition that crows are the harbingers of death. So you don't Don't want crows at your baseball stadium. The
No. No.
the and this guy, the guy that talks about the crows, is the groundskeeper again. He says it's like the Alfred Hitchcock movie Birds, where you're just literally fighting off birds to get to your car at night.
Okay, that's creepy.
Yeah, not
That's
fun.
good. That's a lot. That's too
So,
much.
and again, if you're a skeptic of ghosts, which is a completely fair position to take on the situation, then what I'm about to tell you next also will not sway you. But if you are open to it, which is, I guess, also a fine position to take on the situation, it may. The Rochester, or a company named Rochester Paranormal, was hired to investigate the stadium. They actually investigated it with a crew from ESPN who did a little mini documentary back 15, 16 years ago now for SportsCenter. They investigated the stadium and officially declared it haunted. Best of my knowledge, this is the first stadium in the world to officially be designated as haunted. They said that there were two sets of kind of spirits. One where there were a bunch of spirits that came running at them, and they were all just like, "Oh my God, can you believe it? This is so nice here. Like, have you seen the baseball? We get to see the baseball. Have you seen the baseball?" Right? They were just happy to be there, like Crash Davis and Bull Durham. And then there was another set of ghosts that were like very angry at the whole situation, wanted to get them out. And of course, either because the ghosts are real or because it's all made up. Either way, the ghosts line up with the origin stories, right? There's one set of ghosts that love everything about it. It's awesome. Let's go watch some baseball. That would be the old schoolhouse. And then there's the original haunt, the janitor that wants to keep you out because you're not supposed to be there. That would be the angry version. So I guess make up your own mind, but if you want to go see a game where maybe you can hang out with some folks from 120 years ago, Rochester, New York is your choice.
I wonder if they do tours. Like some places will do like stadium tours and stuff. I wonder if they have like a what do you call them? Like the ghost tours. That's what I'm trying to think. The ghost, like you could do ghost tours in like certain cities or of certain buildings and stuff like that. Like if they have not jumped on that, they need to call me because I've got an idea for them.
I know that they do, because it's a minor league stadium. They got to make as much money as they can. I know they do the haunted house situations all fall after baseball season's over, so that's their way of capitalizing on it. But I'm assuming they'll give you a tour too. I mean, if you just call and say, "Hey, I want you to tell me where the ghosts are right now," they'll charge you some money, but they'll do it.
Sure. But one other thing I just wanted to point out to our listeners: if you weren't aware, okay, I want everybody listening closely. If you weren't aware, ESPN has never lied before.
Never.
So if they were behind this, then it's got to be. It's like they can't put anything on the internet that isn't true. You know.
Well, definitely not. Not on ESPN.
I heard that on the internet. So what do I know?
They're the worldwide leader in sending 720p cameras to sporting events in 2022.
This year. Crazy.
Anyway, ESPN, if you want us to hire us to be part of your podcast network, we'll gladly scrub all what we just said off the internet. Anyway, our second of 3 short stories today is going to deal with the Hockey Hall of Fame. Full disclosure, this story deals with a incident of suicide. So if you are someone who may be affected by a story of such nature, then feel free to skip ahead a little bit. When you hear us talking about the trivia question, you'll know that we're done with this part. And we've got just a little bit of the storytelling is about the Hockey Hall of Fame itself. So you got a little bit of time to grab your phone and skip ahead if you need to. But that's just kind of your fair warning there before we get started. The NHL Hall of Fame, or the Hockey Hall of Fame in general, also like the first story, there is a story in this alone. But they were starting to look for a Hall of Fame in the 1950s, along with several other sports. That seemed to be the decade, the 50s and 60s, when everybody wanted to jump on the baseball bandwagon and have a Hall of Fame too. They partnered originally with an organization. The NHL partnered with the Canadian Amateur Hockey Association to begin the creation of a Hall of Fame in Kingston, Ontario, which, like Cooperstown, New York, is believed to be the birthplace of hockey. As in, Cooperstown is the birthplace of baseball. That's why the Hall of Fame's there. So they want to stick the Hall of Fame here in Kingston. They needed to raise some money to build a physical building, but after a few years, the main fundraiser passed away and they couldn't raise the money to build the building. So the NHL pulled its support and partnered with the entire country of Canada to create their own Hall of Fame in Toronto. The building would be half the Hockey Hall of Fame and half the Canadian Sports Hall of Fame, and they would share the space. And originally, to credit the building or the organization in Kingston, they did finally build a building in the 1960s, which they called the International Hockey Hall of Fame. It's now just called the Original Hockey Hall of Fame, even though there are no inductees other than the original class. To their credit, they did originally cut a deal with the International Ice Hockey Federation, which is the sport's international governing body, to house its Hall of Fame in that space. But eventually the International Ice Hockey Federation said, you know what, why don't we put ours with everything else? And they moved their Hall of Fame to Toronto. Today, the building in Kingston is just kind of a celebration of the sport. It's got some mementos and some memorabilia that you can go watch or go look at, but it is not the actual Hall of Fame. In Toronto, the Hockey Hall of Fame eventually, go figure, when you're sharing space with a Canadian Hall of Fame, eventually you induct enough people and you have enough stuff that you run out of room. That happened for hockey in the late 80s. And they made an agreement to move to a new building that was the former location of the Bank of Montreal. That building, by the way, that the original Hall of Fame sat in Toronto, also no longer exists. The Canadian Hall of Fame moved out of that as well, and now part of that building is an entrance to BMO Field, which is home of Toronto FC and the Toronto Argonauts of the Canadian Football League. I told you the background for the Hockey Hall of Fame is confusing and long, but I smushed it all together for you. But I don't know of another Hall of Fame that is as confusing and has had as many locations as the hockey one, but it has.
No, I don't think so. But basically, anything the NHL touches is confusing and overly complicated. It seems. So, what was it that they were talking about recently? I know they didn't play. They didn't take a break for the 2022 Winter Olympics, but weren't they talking about creating some sort of tournament that would happen at the same time as the Olympics to like compete with them, like to compete with the IOC or something? What was that about? I don't remember.
Yes, they want to take all of the pro hockey, all of the NHL players. They want to remove them from the Olympics permanently. This was supposed to be the first one in a couple they were going to play in. And they don't actually want to send their players to the Olympics because it slows down the regular season and they could get hurt, and they don't have control over it, so they're not making any money on it. Even though I think when hockey's in the Olympics, people get excited about it and the ratings go up right afterwards, so it is a good thing. Yes, they want to take all of their players and do a kind of a World Baseball Classic style event where they put on a World Cup of hockey.
World Cup.
Just with NHL players, instead of letting the IIHF run the situation, which is who runs it. Internationally, they run the World Juniors. They run the World Cup, or World Championships that currently exist. They run on behalf of the IOC, the hockey at the Olympics. Yeah. Hockey people do the weirdest stuff, and it never makes sense, and no one understands why. Like, some games are worth 2 points, some games are worth 3 points. Go figure that one out. Yeah.
I don't understand. But yeah, so anything it is it is confusing and complicated. And I don't know of another sport that has this issue either. But again, it seems like anything the NHL touches is about money. Like they're just on a power trip all of a sudden. I mean, hockey is becoming significantly more popular in America year by year, and so it's not surprising that they want to capitalize on that popularity. But holy crap! Like, don't take away from don't do this. Don't ruin another international competition just for your own game. That's what it seems like.
Yeah, there are a whole lot of people that are hockey fans because of Olympic hockey, and to lose that is probably going down the wrong path. I mean, obviously society is set up to make as much money as you possibly can, but you got to be careful with it. There's ways to end up losing money out of trying to make money. Sometimes you can't go crazy. All right, so the Hockey Hall of Fame moves to this building in this giant complex that used to be the Bank of Montreal. So let me give you a quick background of that building, one particular story from that building. This is your last chance to skip ahead if this story is going to make you uncomfortable, but this is where the haunting of the Hockey Hall of Fame comes from. This is according to investigations and reporting by the Toronto Star. They originally ran this story back in 1953, and then in 2009 did another deep dive to confirm the people involved and identify further the people involved in this story. In March of 1953, a young bank teller committed suicide in the building. She came into work, and shortly after 9 o'clock, there was a mass commotion as she had shot herself. She died later that evening. Some tellings of this story, and it depends on who tells it. The Toronto Star told it one way, another newspaper from Toronto in the 1950s told it a different way, and then the story has gotten legs and it's changed over time. She reportedly killed herself for one of the following reasons. Some people say that she had become pregnant after an affair with the bank's branch manager, and that he had taken to locking her away. He had an apartment inside the building where he could stay. Wasn't his primary residence, but he had access to this apartment as the manager. So some people said he locked her away once she got pregnant and would only let her come to work. And then outside of work, she would go back in and be locked away, and that this drove her to commit suicide. Others say that she had become just kind of despondent with the way he treated her. So she wasn't locked away. She was free to come and go, but the way he was treating her, kind of getting ready to cast her off and run her name through the mud so that he could save his reputation, is what caused her to do this. And the immediate report actually from the Toronto Star was just that she had become heartbroken because her boyfriend had left her for a career on the ships, is how they put it. I guess that means he was getting ready to go a sailing.
Like a fisherman?
I don't know if it meant fishermen or like shipping boats or what. I don't know, but he was going to go to a life at sea. Maybe he was a pirate. I don't know. But almost immediately after this incident, people began reporting doors and windows opening and closing on their own. Not just doors and windows. You can explain doors opening and closing with drafts. That makes sense. Air pressure and such. Windows do not open themselves. That's weird. So I don't know any other way to put that. Just wanted to make sure everybody caught it.
Yeah, windows are fighting a lot of gravity, right?
Yeah,
like they're pretty tight most of the time, and they're fighting gravity moving up and down. Like that's physics, and that's tough.
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
and it's not like they're using, like they might have been using modern windows for 1953, but
yes.
Like imagine walking into a house today that was built in 1953 and how different the window, like it is. They are very different than like how easy windows are to open today. Like that's not something that's easy to do.
Yeah, there's a reason that I think in the Amityville horror they use windows closing on people's hands as a signal that the house is possessed or whatever. And people get uneasy when windows close on their own, but you can explain that too, right? You bump the wall, the building settled, and it loosened it just a little bit, right? Like that.
Moving upwards?
Nah,
No.
man. You about to get you're about to get struck by lightning, and the air pressure's like gusting up real quick, or you're in the midst of something you're not supposed to be around. People also reported the typical sounds, knocks, moans, screams on the upper floors only. Nobody on the lower level of the building ever reported these things, only on the upper level where this person worked. There are 2 quote unquote confirmed sightings from people who were unaware of the story, and that put both the confirmed and the unaware in air quotes because there's no way to prove either of those things. The first event comes from a woman who was playing an event in the building just before renovations, the transition from whatever was in the building prior to the Hockey Hall of Fame occurred. She was playing a harpist, just hanging out, harping away in an event. Is that where that saying comes from? Harp away?
Harping away?
That can't be right. Anyway, yeah, we're going to run with that one. She's sitting there harping away for the people at the event, and she noticed that someone was watching her from the closed second floor, as in she could look up on the balcony, she could see a person looking down at her playing the harp, watching intently. There was not to be anybody up there. She later explained what she had seen, and the people who know the story confirmed that looked a lot, or the description matched that of the bank teller. And so that was one of the sightings. The harpist says that she was unaware of the story existing, or that this was a thing when she did it. The second one is the one that is frightening to me. A young boy was attending the Hockey Hall of Fame. So this is after it's been changed over. He's attending the Hall of Fame, and he became, allegedly, according to the story, he became almost hysterical, screaming to people, saying things like, "Look, there she is. Can't you see her? Look, there she is again." And he was screaming this about a woman that he was watching walk through walls. Like just passing through walls, going about her business, and he's like trying to get everybody's attention, and nobody would respond to him. And allegedly, again, small child, but allegedly did not know anything about the situation before attending and seeing what he saw. The story in the Toronto Star that confirms the identity of the bank teller in question began with talking about how the staffers at the Hockey Hall of Fame will not go on the second floor after 6 p.m. I don't know what the significance of 6 p.m. Maybe it just might be an added detail to go to don't go up there at night. But they won't go up on the second floor after dark, and they will not go up there by themselves. There was one story where one of the Hockey Hall of Fame staffers went up there and just kind of felt like he was just kind of walking aimlessly, but felt like he needed to go into one of the conference rooms on that floor. And when he walked into the conference room, a chair spun around into his hand. And nobody else was in the room with him, and so he took off running. Again, take all ghost stories with appropriate skepticism and grains of salt, because you never know when somebody feels like they saw something, or in the words of Scrooge in Muppet Christmas Carol, just a piece of indigestion. You never know what's happening.
People's brains can do weird stuff. Right, like you can make yourself believe that you saw something or did something that you didn't do, and eventually you tell yourself enough like that. I believe that to be true. 2 weird things. The first confirmed quote unquote sighting, where the harpist is playing on the first floor, looks up on the second floor balcony and sees the woman. If you're not aware, And this is how you know I have kids. If you're not aware, in Encanto, during We Don't Talk About Bruno, like most popular song of the year, like right about in the middle of the song, there's a fun little nugget while two of the girls are singing, and they're singing facing the camera, but behind them, up on the second floor, you can see like a figure that is allegedly Bruno, and he's like dancing to the music. I don't know if y'all hear this and then watch Encanto and have not seen this and then watch the movie and notice it, let me know, because
Yeah,
that's how you know I have kids.
that's real. That's real.
But that's pretty neat. But I guess this comic goes from this story and the one before. Uh, Eyewitness testimony is like the worst thing ever. It's like the most unreliable thing ever, right? And so, and what if you don't believe in ghosts, and then like they're seeing nothing, like their brain is making them see things that aren't there, right? If you do believe in ghosts, it's still um, it's still hard to believe that the like of the supernatural sometimes, but just in any case, really, eyewitness testimony is like the most unreliable thing ever. And as we've talked about here before, history over time, stories just get blown up over time, and stories change and stuff. And so, like the story that we're telling you now, someone covers it in 20 years could be different depending on who's telling it. And so just a little nugget to just to take in why about both of these with the supernatural stuff. That eyewitness testimony is already weird,
Yep.
already unreliable for the most part.
The first NASCAR race that I ever attended was at Rockingham. Originally, I was supposed to go with my brother, my father, my uncle, my cousin. Ended up just going with my brother and my father the next day because it rained it out on the original day. Anyway, I was a big 43 old Richard Petty fan, but by that point, Bobby Hamilton was driving the car. He won the race. So the first race I attended, my favorite driver at the time won the race. So you would think I have this memory stored in my memory banks, locked away permanently, right? In my memory. And I'm telling you, like that day on the drive home, I'm playing it back in my head. He makes the pass for the win on the inside of the corner. We get home and the news is showing it, and he makes the pass for the win on the outside. And that is not the way I remembered it. It's not the way it played in my head. That is not what happened, but it is what happened.
That's what you remember.
Yeah, your memory, the more it is literally like a computer. The more you access a file, the more you corrupt the file, and you put in your current feelings and current ideas. And when you say, well, what would have happened? You're combining that with the original memory. Our memories suck. They are not good.
Really bad.
Yeah. All right. Before we get to our last story, it is trivia time. We're going to stump the Sykes. It's going to happen.
I'm feeling it.
I have picked a very weird statistic that you're going to guess the two people involved with the statistic. And we have arrived. That's not a word. We have arrived at this spot because the subject of our third story finished in the top 10 of exactly two statistical categories in his entire career. One was twice he was in the top 10 in games played as a pitcher in a season, and that's boring. That's not fun. We don't want to do that one. He also twice finished in the top 10 in a statistic called, get a load of this because baseball is the best, championship win probability added. He twice finished in the top 10 of championship win probability added. It is a statistic that measures how your performance impacts your team's ability to win a championship.
What?
Exactly.
What?
Your job, Blake Sykes, if you choose to blah, 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 blah. We're leaving that in. Your job, whether you choose to accept that it or not, is to name the career leader and the active leader in championship win probability added.
Oh my goodness.
Not nearly as hard as you think it is, but yeah, championship win probability added.
Active
The active and career. So two different players. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Championship win probability added. This isn't war. This isn't wins above replacement.
This is not war. This is not value over replacement player, which is it's not even batting or OPS plus or something else. Okay, I didn't know this existed until last night.
Well, me either. So let's give it a go. Okay, let's start with active.
Okay.
Who do they play for?
They play for the St. Louis Cardinals. And everyone shouts it there.
I was going to say, wait, I thought this guy changed teams. No.
That could be a question.
Oh, yeah. St. Louis Cardinals, a name immediately popped into my head. What position?
This player in his career has played first base. Let's start. Actually, let me back it up. He played left field, third base, then first base, and is now, with the advent of the National League DH, playing that mostly.
Okay.
And you do want to ask your other question just to make sure you're right.
Just to make sure I'm right, but I think I'm right.
If you think you're right, go for it.
I'm going to guess Albert Pujols.
Albert Pujols is the current active leader in championship win probability added. And yeah, he did switch teams. He was on the Angels for a while.
Yeah. Okay.
But
it's like, wait a minute.
Yeah, come back to the Cardinals. Spent from 2012 to 2021. So parts of 10
He just signed a 1-year deal, right? And he's announced his retirement. So
yeah, he's going to be done after this year. But he's already hit 2 home runs just in the short part of the season. He is 48% total championship win probability added. He is the current active leader above Miguel Cabrera, Paul Goldschmidt, Joey Votto, and Mike Trout. One of the top 5. All right, so now you got the career guy left.
So now I just have like a million or two to pick from. Yep. Okay. Who did he play for?
You've only burned one question, though. Or 2 questions.
2 questions.
Yeah. So here's
who did the career leader play for?
Well, it would stand to reason that the career leader in championship win probability added plays for the team, the most decorated team in all of professional sports in the world.
Okay.
The New York Yankees
go ahead and say the
baseball
Yankees.
club.
Okay, well, there's plenty of those. I know. All right, I've got a couple names in mind of like the players who played for the Yankees who won the most championships. What position did they play?
Okay, so this is going to give it away. Dag nabbit. This player primarily played right field for the New York Yankees. However, he did also pitch.
Right field and pitching. Okay. One more. When were they active?
From 1914 to 1935.
Babe Ruth.
It's Babe Ruth. Yeah, I intentionally left out the Boston Red Sox and the Boston. Oh man, what was that other team? Boston Braves.
The Braves for like
off of his a minute. Yeah, off of his teams played for, because I figured that would make it too easy if I was like the Red Sox and the Yankees. He also pitched,
and then he played this team. And then...
yeah. So yeah, look, that was. I told you it wasn't as hard as you thought it would be.
That's interesting though, because like Joe DiMaggio won 9 championships in 13 years, but he's not
in the top 5.
There.
Yep. So Babe Ruth is number one, and then Mickey Mantle's number two, and then Willie Mays, Lou Gehrig, and Stan Musial.
That's weird. That's a weird statistic. If like the play, if it's called championships, like if the word championships is in it, you would think the number of championships won would count.
Yeah, there's an explanation on the Baseball Reference page about like what it is, and they use like the shot heard around the world example where like if he doesn't hit the home run, then his team has a 0% chance of winning the World Series after that play, and if he does hit a home run, they have a 100% chance of winning the World Series after that play, and then I don't know, it's one of those normed statistics that has a whole bunch of data points that get in there beyond that, and it is confusing. Also, Stan Musial is the fifth place person on that list, so it's a great time to always remind people he is one of the two best outfielders born on November 21st in Donora, Pennsylvania, that hit left-handed. So
you got to throw that in.
Both he and Ken Griffey Jr., the same town, same date on the calendar that they were born. Anyway, all right. So the reason that we did this is because our last story features probably the most superstitious man in the world, or at least the most superstitious baseball player, Turk Wendell, who played 11 seasons, mostly for the Cubs and Mets, but also for the Phillies and Rockies, four clubs all in the National League. He was a key member of the 2000 New York Mets, who lost to the aforementioned New York Yankees in that year's World Series. He had several seasons, just to tell you about him as a ball player, where he, by his stats, either the old version of stats, just plain ERA and strikeouts and stuff like that, he would, or by modern statistics with WHIP and Ks per nine and batting average, balls in play, all that stuff. Either way, we'd consider him a very good reliever. He's somebody you would want to have on your team. Having him in your bullpen made you a better team, but he was never one of the best, and he never spent a lot of seasons as a closer. He was always just kind of just a general reliever. But the thing that made him famous are all the things that he did besides pitching. He originally chose the number 13 on purpose because it was, quote, cool. No other reason, just this is a fun number. Let me be number 13.
Cool.
When he joined the Mets in 1999, that number was already taken by Edgardo Alfonso, so he chose to be number 99 instead. There are no real superstitions with the number 99. It's just a weird number to take. And again, he took it for one of two reasons. Sometimes it's superstition. Sometimes it's because he was given a shout out to Charlie Sheen's character, the Wild Thing, in Major League. Sometimes it's just because, again, Wendell thought it was a, quote, cool number.
Cool.
So, just cool. This is a weird dude. He developed many things that became habits over the year. What we would call superstitions, he says, are things that just got him in his comfort zone or just helped him enjoy the ball game and have fun. He would do all of these following things depending on what his club would let him do. But that goes to what you were saying at the, what we were talking about at the beginning of the episode. Superstitions are more about routine and being comfortable, making sure your head's right before you do something more than it is, actual superstition. Before his warm-ups, every inning, he would go to the mound and he would draw 3 crosses on the mound. These represented the 3 prayers he had for each outing: to do his best, to be injury-free, and to win. That, in and of itself, not that strange. But at the end of drawing the 3 crosses, he would also lick the dirt off of his finger.
Okay, Les Miles eating grass on the sideline. Like, what are you doing?
Exactly. The second idiosyncrasy is that he and his catcher, between the two of them, only one of them could be standing and one of them squatting at any given time. So when he went out to the mound, if his catcher had not yet made it to behind home plate, he would squat on the mound. And when his catcher would squat behind the plate, he would stand up and take his warm-up throws. Couldn't both be doing it at the same time. He would also begin every single inning by turning to the center fielder and waving to him until the center fielder waved back.
Imagine like they just didn't. I mean, like imagine the first time, like how long he's just like, hey, like he had to warn them beforehand to be like, hey, when I get up there right before I start, I'm gonna wave at you. I need you to wave back before I start. Because if he didn't do that, like you can just imagine him like just waving into the outfield and no one knowing. Who are you waving at? What are you doing?
This is one that former general manager for a couple of different teams, Jim Duquette, was actually his center fielder in his first year in the minor leagues. And it's him that says, "No, this definitely happened." This is one that didn't make it to the bigs. It got shut down by the Cubs early in his big league career. But yeah, that one is the thing. He also asked for the umpires to roll the balls to him instead of throwing it to him. And if an umpire did throw him the ball instead of rolling it, he would either miss it so it would land on the ground, or he'd just let it bump off his chest and fall to the ground before he would pick it up and use the ball. He couldn't use the ball directly from somebody else's hand. Now these are the ones that end up being more well known from him. He did these throughout his career when he was a little bit more famous. Okay. The first one is that he would bound over the baselines, not the typical baseball superstition of just not stepping on the baseline, which some people don't even follow anyway. No. He would run to the baseline and then leap over it like a gazelle in the Sahara, like just jumping. That was a thing that happened. He also would pack. He says that he's never done drugs. He's never sipped alcohol. He's never done anything like that. So instead of doing chewing tobacco, he would pack black licorice into his teeth before pitching. He'd just stuff it in there, wrap it around his gums, be full of black licorice. This led to a habit that's actually on one of his baseball cards, where he would brush his teeth every inning because he didn't like the way the licorice made his teeth feel.
There's a solution to that.
The licorice, he used the licorice because it made him pitch better, it made him comfortable, but he didn't like the way it made him feel. So as soon as he was done, he had to brush his teeth. And he originally in the minor leagues was a starter, so he has to do this every inning.
Did that for a
legitimately.
long time.
One thing that may have gone unknown because he wore long pants is that he never wore socks. To him, socks served no purpose. Never. He would not wear socks to his sister's wedding, according to Saber. So just had no purpose. He didn't think they did anything. They definitely provide some support. In some cases, they keep your heels from rubbing. They soak away sweat to keep your shoes from smelling bad. But I guess to him, that was not useful enough.
That's what the shoes are for. They did the same thing.
He was also an avid hunter. This may be the first thing people notice about him. When he pitched, sometimes the Cubs didn't let him do it. They wanted him to hide it. The Mets had no problem. He wore a necklace that was full of claws and teeth of his kills. So he's just sitting out there looking like a little, I don't even know how to describe it, but he's just got animal stuff on his neck. Parts. So that's maybe that's intimidation. Maybe that's just, pride. I don't know.
Intimidation.
By the way, the bounding over the line thing, his quote about that is that he stepped on the baseline once in high school, gave up a couple of runs, so he never wanted to do that again. Don't know why we got to jump over the baseline the way he did, but
like is because there's like a dirt trail too, right? There's like a dirt trail down the baseline on either side.
Oh yeah,
so
he cleared that whole thing.
Leaping from grass to grass. Oh,
he definitely could have.
That's gazelle-like.
Yeah, he's bouncing. In the last goofy thing or superstitious thing from him is that in 1999, he signed a contract with the Mets that ended in 99 cents just for fun. He said, that's weird. Nobody would ever do that. That's not a normal thing. Look at this. I want as many 99s as I can have. So in 2000, his agent set him up with a 3-year contract that if everything, all the incentives were met, it would be worth $9,999,999.99. As many nines as we could pack in the deal.
Well, I've got a proposition for someone. When someone signs us and pays us to do this podcast, we're only taking $1,234,567.89.
Okay, that's great until somebody only wants to pay us $123.45.
Got to be 1 through 9, or we're not accepting. Not accept. I'm just kidding.
I don't
just
think. We got a ways to go.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so there's our if you're with us live, our Friday the 13th spooktacular, and if you're not with us live, hopefully you enjoyed it as you found it. You got any last thoughts, Blake?
I love these. Like, I love just remembering athlete superstitions, and like I said earlier, like their free throw routines and their at bat routines and stuff like that. I love watching like the weird stuff people do to get themselves in the zone. So I'm sure there are a ton of these. So if we did this every week, like every Tuesday before the next Friday the 13th, I'd be okay with that.
Samesies, honestly, same. All right, that's your episode. If you got an idea or a thought that we can either do a full episode on, or like this where we can do a couple together, let us know on social media or reach out to us. We'll be glad to do it. And until next time, thanks for listening.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of What You Don't Know About Sports. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please leave us a review, 5 stars only, and hit that subscribe button wherever you listen. If you have a great sports story, we want to hear about it. You can connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at WYDKAS Podcast, and on our YouTube channel at What You Don't Know About Sports Podcast. All episodes are written, recorded, and edited by us. Stay tuned for the next episode.